Rudy Provoost, welcome. You're the CEO of Rexel. Dan, Esty, welcome. You're a professor of environmental law and policy at Yale University in the United States. Together, you have co-authored an op-ed piece in the Huffington Post entitled Shifting Gears on Climate Change, and we're really happy and honored to have you here at COP21 Conference on Climate Change in Paris, and we're going to focus with the two of you in this segment today on building renovation. How can it help tackle the climate change issue? Rudy.
Well, buildings represent 40% of the energy consumption and 25% of the carbon emissions. And if you think about this, worldwide we have a building stock of close to 150 billion square meters, which will grow in the next 10 years with another 25%. So as a matter of fact, if you take, for example, the residential part of that building stock, which represents 2/3 of the total, the renovation rate is 1% a year. So if nothing changes, it's going to take us a century to make renovation happen and tap into the opportunity. And the opportunity is huge, it's very big. So as a matter of fact, I think there's no reason to just sit there and wait, because the technologies are available. You can come up with very energy efficient heating, ventilation, lighting solutions, and pretty much change the landscape. May I give you an example? If you introduce LED lighting, you reduce the energy bill on the lighting side with 40%. If you add controls and sensors and a bit of intelligence, then you add another 40%. So that's why building renovation is one of the big opportunities going forward.
Dan, so how can we make this work? What are some of the solutions maybe to reach these climate objectives?
One of the things I think is really important is that this meeting, this COP21, is going to be, I believe, a turning point in the global response to climate change. And we've had 20 years with more talk than action, but what I think you see emerging as a theme here in Paris is a commitment to implementation of the clean energy future that we know we need to bring about. And obviously, energy efficiency is a critical part of that, and that's why companies like Rexel are here, because they are recognizing that they can't sit back and let this all be driven by national governments. It's really now a moment where we're looking for broader engagement on the issue. We're recognizing that there is a conversation among the presidents, prime ministers, and their negotiators, but beyond that, there's clearly a role for mayors and governors and CEOs and civil society leaders who are going to bring forward solutions and really move us towards this clean energy future. And I think what you see is a number of companies, and Rudy, I congratulate you for being among them, are here saying we can help deliver this clean energy future. And I think that's very exciting. I am predicting, and it's still too early to say, but I'm predicting that we're going to really remember this Paris moment as the inflection point for the world, where after several decades of gearing up, but not really driving forward, the world is really going to take off. And a critical piece of that will be energy efficiency, because that is in many cases the highest payback for your dollar or euro or RMB invested. You get very fast returns, and you deliver not only an economic benefit, but an environmental one as well.
We hear you talking about policy, politics, energy efficiency. Would you say that there's a strong enough political will or focus or commitment on energy efficiency in buildings?
I think one of the things that we're really focusing on at this moment is getting beyond worrying about whether there is a political focus, particularly at the national government level. I think what we've begun to see is a much broader set of parties that are interested on this topic. I think you've got mayors and governors and premiers and local government leaders who are saying energy efficiency is critical to the success of my city or state or province. I think you've got corporate leaders who recognize this is important to the competitiveness of their enterprises. And frankly, you've got citizens who are saying this is how I can bring down my energy bill. And there are lots of opportunities, as Rudy has explained and as Rexel provides out in the marketplace every day. So I think there is no longer a desire to wait and see if the governments tell us all the answers, particularly those national governments. Instead, we're looking for an expanding set of programs, kind of a portfolio approach to encouraging clean energy with a special new set of incentives and financing mechanisms that I think are going to ramp up dramatically the commitment in buildings, which remain a very significant part of the challenge and the opportunity.
Rudy, what is your take on the policy-making aspect?
Well, I would give a European example, which I consider as encouraging. I mean, recently Juncker announced a plan, an investment plan that represents 300 billion euros to be invested over the next 3 years, and essentially is based on the premise of public and private sector joining forces and working together. It's based on the premise of creating a pipeline, a portfolio of projects and programs, and it basically calls for the people in the value chain teaming up and kind of challenging their own boundaries and constraints. Now, I think France, in a way, is a good example. Actually, France was the first European country embracing the Juncker plan and co-financing with Caisse de Dépôt a 400 million euro loan to promote energy renovation in buildings. We're talking here about 40,000 social housing buildings that really will generate 800 million of revenues and 6,000 new jobs. So bringing together the environmental side with the economic side is an important element in that. But I would say it's just a first stepping stone. It's a snapshot, but a few snapshots don't make a movie. So to create like this action movie, I think all governments in a way should do something similar at national level and try to bring all stakeholders together and create what I would call a building renovation and innovation master plan. And I think that's important, that there is a holistic approach to this where all forces are brought together.
Let's look at financing of the issue for a minute. What do you think, Dan, what do you think should change to ensure that the transition to a low-carbon energy and economy will be financed?
Well, first of all, let's focus on the need to pay attention to finance. Through much of the 20th century, no one stopped and asked how we're going to pay for these good things we want to do, including the investments we need to make in clean energy. And I think we want to start, by the way, from a policy point of view, in taking down the subsidies for fossil fuels. That's one way we can actually improve the picture quite quickly. And there are billions, in fact, hundreds of billions of dollars spent on fossil fuel subsidies across this world that torque our energy future in the wrong direction. So that's a step one. Step two is, again, I think this idea of a broader strategy set, a broader portfolio, and frankly, innovation, not only in technology, but in finance. We need green bonds and green banks and a whole set of new ways to flow resources to the projects of building out energy efficiency in every sector. This is partly in homes, and by the way, not just houses, but apartments and condos and senior living centers. It's also a strategy for buildings that are being used by commercial enterprises, and then of course industrial as well, where there are real competitiveness gains to investments in efficiency.
Our audience knows this is not staged. We're here in Paris, live at COP21 with marching bands walking by the TV studio. On to our next question. Let's talk about, with you maybe, Rudy, the end user, consumers, how we convince them to make the shift towards energy efficiency in their homes.
Well, I think in general that consumers, end users are, becoming increasingly more ready, willing and able. But I still think we have work to do to enable them even more, to encourage them even more, to empower them even more. And I think there's three levels of kind of influencing behavior, changing behavior. One has to do with, the right technologies, the right accessible technologies. We're getting to a point where, lighting solutions or solar or photovoltaic or heating and ventilation solutions, get into the bandwidth of payback within a year. So I think it's important that we talk about, tangible benefits and make consumers aware that actually with reasonable investment they get a great return. I mean, the second level is really about the application level. Increasingly more, there's smart thermostats out there, intelligent lighting, energy efficient heat pumps. In a way you can kind of start changing the whole ecosystem. And these applications are very close to home. Yeah? And it's like energy efficiency at your fingertips because we all have a smartphone. And increasingly more you actually can monitor your home or by adding some controls and building automation features, get to much higher levels of return. And then the third element is really about incentives. What Dan was talking about is important. I think incentives are important from a fiscal standpoint. You could come up with fiscal mechanisms, just decreasing VAT for certain product categories could make a change in behavior. There's the financial schemes and anything that helps to kind of make it easy for a consumer, for an end user to take the decision.
Well, Before we wrap up, since we are here in Paris at Le Bourget live, and we've got negotiators in the building next door, I want to ask you both as a parting conclusion, what message would you like to address to the negotiators here at COP21? Dan, you first.
So I think we've got to move off the strategy of the last 20 years, which relied on a national government, presidents and prime ministers talking to each other strategy, and recognize that it's critical that the progress on climate change is going to require broader engagement. It's going to require us getting mayors involved, governors involved, business leaders involved, civil society leaders, and frankly, all of us eventually as citizens. And I think there are strong signs that that's emerging as part of what the Paris package will look like. And so I'm very excited about this concept of broader engagement as a defining feature of what this Paris Conference of the Parties will be remembered for. And I do think there's a couple of other elements that we can hope to celebrate. I think innovation is the other key spirit that we want to see in the agreement and more broadly in the outcome from Paris beyond the agreement itself. And that's where I think companies are playing a huge role, bringing to bear their technologies, marrying information technology in particular to clean energy challenges, which Rudy has done so well and talked about today. But I think that really allows us to see a way forward where the public will understand the shift to clean energy is not just about bearing a burden for the environment, but actually going to have economic benefits and frankly give us a higher quality of life in the 21st century.
And Rudy, your message to negotiators.
Well, I would say look for quick wins, things that become tangible and concrete. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. I think we need to focus on what really makes a difference, what really moves the needle. But I think every decision, every recommendation should actually live up to, I would say, three promises or a triple play. One is environmental value, and there we get into anything that contributes to staying below that plus 2%, 2 degrees Celsius by 2020. But there's also the economic value. And I think economic value has two sides. There's like what I would call the micro level, where we need to think in terms of affordability of and accessibility to energy for households. And then there's the bigger play where we need to look for engines of economic growth and job creation. And then thirdly, I think call it existential value. I mean, what you call then quality of life. And I would say, if I would use the language of the Rockefeller Foundation or the Lancet Commission, it's about planetary health. And I think that should be the broader context in which the decisions and recommendations are articulated.
Gentlemen, thank you both. Dan Esty, Professor of Law and Environment at Yale University. Rudy Provoost, the CEO of Rexel. Thank you for being with us here in Paris at COP21 Climate Conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.